In this short video, we will be looking at two important concepts um, of mechanical versus organic solidarity. And these concepts are important sociological concepts. But they are also used in other disciplines, for example, in philosophy, law, etc. And we owe these concepts to, in their current form anyway, to Durkheim, Durkheim, there's an I here, I think, Emile, Durkheim, a French sociologist who is with Weber, with Marx, Weber, Marx, and others, is one of the founding fathers of modern sociology or sociology. And sociology, like economics, is a modern subject in the sense that before modernity, we don't have economics or sociology in the current sense. Of course, people talked about economy and society, but that doesn't make a subject economics. There was no subject called economics before modernity. Similarly, there was no, I'll make some videos on this as well. There was no subject called sociology because sociology is a subject or is a discipline which provides justification for modernity. So if you define subject in this way, modernity, sociology by definition doesn't exist before modernity. Anyway, that's not the point at the moment. So these two concepts, the concept of, obviously the concept of solidarity is very important. And Durkheim differentiate between two basic concepts of solidarity: mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity. The name is a bit misleading, but so you might think that organic solidarity is the one which he defined as mechanic solidarity. So you have to change your orientation a bit. Anyway, so he makes this distinction. At least there are two uses of this distinction in Durkheim. First is he uses this distinction between mechanical and organic solidarity to differentiate between, or more precisely to demarcate between, primitive and modern societies. And by primitive, obviously, on the one hand, we can mean simple societies, but Any society before modernity is primitive in this sense, um, which will be defined in a minute. So the first use he makes is to differentiate between of this distinction is different, demarcate between modern and pre-modern societies. Okay, and the second use he makes of it is to distinguish within a society, and that can be any society, in two modes of integration. And one is mechanical, the other is organic. So my main interest here is, because we are trying to understand modernity, the first one, but I'll say something about the second one as well, because so at the end it cannot be separated from the first question. Okay, but before that, we should define the two concepts. So let's start with mechanical solidarity. So mechanical solidarity is a solidarity in which there are few characteristics which define mechanical solidarity. The first is that the difference between individuals is minimal in this mode of solidarity. And obviously we don't mean that they all look like each other, even though that's very important as well. If you look at the issue of racism and all that. But what he basically means is that people's difference between people as to what they believe, so their belief system, their values, what they consider sacred, etc., is the same. It's very minimal difference between people, which means that collective norms or social norms are the overriding factor in this mode of solidarity. So people belong to similar sort of worldviews, they have similar sort of values, they have similar sort of feeling, they have similar sort of rituals, etc. And the differences are minimal in the sense that differences are about very minor matters and not about the core values or core belief system, etc. And well, this is a prototype. I don't think there ever was a society like that, but these are some of the myths of modernity anyway. So this is the mechanical modernity. And in mechanical modernity, collective consciousness is very strong. And by collective consciousness, he means in different books, it is defined a bit differently, but so collective consciousness is deep beliefs about different things shared by a large sort of a society or a large number of people who constitute a society. This is one definition. So collective consciousness is a deep belief which is shared by a large number of people. And if we apply this to our definition of mechanical solidarity, it would fit in that in mechanical society, collective consciousness is very, very strong. So much so that individual consciousness is almost totally subsumed under collective consciousness. Another definition of, or another way to put collective consciousness is collective consciousness say that is simply the body of beliefs and sentiments. That's actually Durkheim's own words. Sentiments, or translation of his word, common to the average of the members of a society. So similar sort of to the previous one, beliefs and sentiments common to the average member of society. So in modern day American political speak, do they call it a speak? You can say that it is center center right or whatever they call it. Anyway, it's a collective consciousness is a consciousness which is, the average consciousness of a society, in terms of beliefs and sentiments. And again, mechanical consciousness is a form of solidarity, and by implication a form of society in which collective consciousness is very high. Average member of society has the same belief as the collective consciousness. And probably it is called mechanical solidarity because, in such society, because especially if society is in a society, mechanical solidarity is very high. Individual is basically a cog in a machine. Now, okay, this seemed to have about organic solidarity. Organic solidarity is the exact opposite of the mechanical solidarity, in the sense that in this form of solidarity, individuals are no longer similar. So there are a lot of differences. So differences are in belief system, in rituals, in value system. So the differences are the defining characteristics of such a society. So, and if we go back to our notion of collective consciousness, in organic society in organic solidarity, collective consciousness is low, medium to low, I guess. And this is not his. So collective consciousness, at least, is not as high as a society which is based mainly on mechanical solidarity. So this is the two distinctions, and probably it's called organic. I'm not entirely convinced by this, but it's called organic solidarity, because in an organic being or like for example, human beings, plants, different parts have essential functions, and their functions cannot be reduced to the function of an organ as a whole. So this is one of the reasons. I don't know whether this is the reason explained by Durkheim, but some of the commentators have mentioned this. So this is the basic concept. Now, he applies first to differentiate between pre-modern, and modern society. So pre-modern society, the societies which are mechanical societies. In those societies, the difference between these are societies of resemblances, according to Durkheim. The differences between individuals are minimal in terms of their belief system and value system. So organic solidarity is very low and mechanical solidarity is very high. Obviously, there has to be some form of organic solidarity, otherwise we will be talking about, robots, not human beings. And the modern societies, on the other hand, are societies in which the defining characteristics of solidarity, defining way of solidarity is organic solidarity. So difference between people are very high. And this goes back to which we said in an earlier video, that what defines modernity is the concept of freedom. And this existence of difference is basically existence of freedom. And what Durkheim really is saying is that in pre-modern society, people have very little freedom. And in modern societies, we have a lot of freedom. Okay. And this is one common way of defining modernity, obviously. For example, German sociologist and philosopher Jürgen Habermas has defined or distinguished between modern and pre-modern worldviews on the basis of the concept of generalization of concept of disintegration from Piaget. And there he also emphasizes the notion of differentiation and the ability to distinguish and distance. Probably I'll make a separate video on that, Habermas's concept of disintegration. But to go back to point Durkheim distinguish between, that's the first point, modern and pre-modern societies on the basis of this concept or this distinction between mechanical and organic solidarity. And he thinks that modern societies are societies mainly based on organic solidarity, so there's a lot of freedom, a lot of a difference, and that's totally opposite to what used to be in primitive society and societies which came after until the dawn of the modern era. Okay, now the second use he makes of this is, for any society, he thinks that you have to have some form of mechanical solidarity, in the sense that you have a collective consciousness and individuals are socialized in that collective consciousness. So there are a lot of taken for granted beliefs, values, norms, and those norms provide background consensus on the basis of which we form the second layer of organic solidarity. And although every society requires mechanical solidarity in the sense, but modernity especially needed because modern societies are societies defined by organic solidarity. So their collective consciousness is basically very thin in theory. So in fact they need more of a deep consensus than primitive society because they are based on consensus. They need consensus. So, and Durkheim sees in the early modern era this is provided by penal law, in the sense that penal law. So, for example, if somebody murders and somebody commits a financial fraud, this guy goes and is hanged, but this guy destroyed millions of people's livelihood and probably indirectly killed a lot of people, but he gets 3 or 4 years jail term. So why is this difference? According to Durkheim, and I don't want to go into detail of that, is that because penal law deals with areas which violate modern societies' sacred bonds, and that is its very existence. And so penal law, in the motive is not just of revenge, but we are so outraged when such things happen because our very existence is at at stake, and that Durkheim showed that in modern society there is that sacred background consensus pool of it, without which it's so if you see, so there are penal laws are hard to enact but also hard to repeal, and they are few in numbers. That's because they deal with this sensitive area. On the other hand, civil law easy to enact, easy to change, etc., and we are not that much outraged by its violation, according to Durkheim anyway. But on the other hand, Durkheim also sees decline of penal law in modern Western societies, and that sort of refers to or points to decline of solidarity in modern societies, and that is understandable because if the societies are basically based on the glorification of freedom and differences, then they are going to disintegrate collective consciousness. And that's the dilemma of modern society. That's why, although these societies are based on freedom more than any societies in the world, they try to manage people's socials and group behavior through education, through media, through films, through market, etc. Because less solidarity you have, you need more control, really. But when you control, you have a dilemma that your society, the very legitimacy of your society is based on not controlling, providing freedom. So you have to really hide it and hide it. So somehow sending people to prison should be justified as some sort of freedom for other people, I guess. So that's the dilemma of modern society, which Durkheim's concept also sort of because modern society through the propagation of organic solidarity destroys collective and group solidarity in modern society, and people become more and more fragmented, individualized, atomized. They need more control, etc. And whenever modern societies face crisis, they don't really have much to go back on, and they go to they end up going back to distorted forms of pre-modern solidarity systems like racism, nationalism, bastardized forms of religion, etc., etc. So this shows us the richness of these two concepts which Durkheim put forth, which are very, very fruitful concept in understanding modernity and distinguishing or demarcating them from pre-modern society, but also for understanding the problems of modern society. So that's it. So we'll keep doing these short videos on these core concepts. Next, probably I'll do one on Habermas or something similar. Okay, thank you.